Hey there everyone, this is Austin, the co-host of GNN, and I know you guys were expecting this to be a live show this week. Unfortunately, there's been a little bit of a hang-up. So right now, I'm actually at a funeral because we had a death in the family, and it totally conflicted with the live stream. And on top of it, I am leaving on my honeymoon next Tuesday, so we have a little bit of a tight window right now. But we wanted to get you a little bit of something, even though we're a little unplanned. And so Charles and I are currently coordinating across the country to give you our first impressions of Fallout 4 after only having it for, 20 hours? So that means we should have like 40 hours worth of time in it. Anyway, Charles is gonna be here with his thoughts.
Thank you, Austin, and thank you for tuning in, listeners. This will be our penultimate episode of GNN. We'll be back in a few weeks for the very shoddy finale on December 4th. But for now, Austin and I will give our thoughts in a non-spoilery way on what we thought about Fallout 4. So Austin and I spoke with each other a little bit before this, and we disagree on something. I love the storyline in all the previous Fallouts, but I felt like Fallout 4 had the weakest introductory level. A key factor in the story of Fallout 4 is your character's spouse and child. And of course, the spouse and child are very important to the character, but the player doesn't get to know them very well. I won't say what happens, but something bad happens to these characters, and that's what drives the storyline in the beginning of the game. And I felt that Bethesda really rushed the introduction. As a player, I didn't feel attached to my spouse or to my child, and in fact, we see very little of the pre-war world. The other Fallout games allow the player to create your own protagonist with a blank slate. In the first Fallout game, the player knows almost nothing about their character and gets to create it all from scratch. But Bethesda is handing you this pre-created history as spouse and mother living in this neighborhood, and it's clearly intended to be a different experience from what the previous Fallout games are about. And it's great that they're trying to do something new and different with the storyline. In Mass Effect, Commander Shepard is defined to a certain extent. And this happens in lots of terrific role-playing games where you can create your own character. But in this particular story, I don't think they succeeded in making the player share the same intensity and motivation as the character that they're controlling. And then they very quickly get you out into the wasteland. And because Fallout 4 has a new set of mechanics for crafting stuff and building towns, the storyline immediately derails into a tutorial on how to build your town and how to manage your people. So it starts off slowly, it doesn't really motivate the player to follow the main storyline, and then that main storyline itself gets shoved aside so that we can learn about how to build houses and how to harvest and craft things. And eventually we get deeper into the game after a couple of hours, depending on how aggressively people pursue the main quest line. It's still going to take a couple of hours before they're at the point where they learn that your character's problems are now tied into much bigger problems around the wasteland. And for me, the storyline only got interesting once I was told that this character's problems are part of a widespread problem in the wasteland. And then there's the new crafting system, which, again, in these early levels, it's more of a chore that you have to deal with, because you can't craft really good stuff until you've managed to level up some of the crafting-related perks. But of course, it's a Fallout game and I love Fallout, and the developers eventually won me over. It took quite a while before I really started to get into the storyline, and in fact it was only the arrival of a certain private investigator, I'm not going to spoil it for you, but that's the moment that really turned the game around for me. For those of you who've already played through the game, you know who I'm talking about. And that's the point that I really started to develop affection for this world and the people that are inside it. And without spoiling too much, another personal favorite moment of mine is, of course, the Linda Carter cameo. Linda Carter plays a role. You can flirt with the character, and unfortunately, the character build that I'm using right now doesn't have very high charisma, so I failed in my attempts to flirt with virtual Linda Carter. So, darn it. Next character that I do is definitely going to have much higher speech. And for those of you who are wondering what kind of character build that I'm using, I'm playing female. I put most of my special skills at middle of the road. I didn't want the character to excel too much at anything. On GNN, we've ranted in the past that I feel like sometimes if your speech is too high, you can end up talking your way around missions and not having to actually go on missions and do stuff just by walking up to the guard and saying, come on, buddy, let me in there. And also I've tried to avoid over-specializing in any one combat skill, so I've been using a little bit of everything so far, and I'm pursuing a mostly good karma playthrough. It seems that the companions that I like most prefer that I play good karma, so if I want to keep them around for a while, I'm going to have to be good karma for the foreseeable future. Every time I play a Bethesda game or something by BioWare or Obsidian, and I always say, well, I'm just going to murder my way through the main storyline and get it over really quick. And then, of course, I eventually get sucked into the storyline and I end up playing the hero, even though I'd intended to be Hannibal Lecter. So I will, in my next playthrough, do a Hannibal Lecter build and just murder and eat my way through the game. And for those of you who are wondering what kind of hardware I'm using, I'm actually playing it on the PlayStation 4, and I have the Pip-Boy edition, so for those of you who haven't tried the companion application, I strongly suggest that you do. It's a real fun edition. You don't need to have the actual physical Pip-Boy, and you don't need to strap it to your wrist, although I guess, just get some duct tape and tape your phone to your wrist if you want that experience. But it is a fun addition to the game. It does augment the experience, and this is something that I would love to see Bethesda go back, and if they ever do an HD version of Skyrim, that's the one game that really made me think, oh, I wish they would make a companion app so I can just download all these books that I'm finding in-game to my phone and then read them at my leisure. And so the stuff that I'm finding in Fallout 4, this companion app for smartphones is a terrific addition. If you haven't played with it yet, I strongly recommend that you get it and have it running while you're playing the game. And to sum up, after having a couple of days of hands-on play with the game, I'm really enjoying the world and the characters that are in it, but I don't feel entirely connected to the main character that I'm controlling, because this character is a collaboration between the player, who's building the details of the character's abilities, and they're collaborating with the narrative designers, who have given this character their motivation and their backstory. And I think that the balance that Bethesda has chosen with this is going to resonate much more strongly with players who are themselves parents. And for those of you who are more concerned with mechanics than with story that haven't jumped into the game yet, the one piece of advice that I got to give you is grab perks that will help you with crafting. And so now I'm going to kick it over to Austin Horrigan, who apparently really liked the story, so let's hear what he has to say.
Interestingly, I know Charles did not like the plot that much, but I actually am quite fond of it. And I'm wondering if this is some kind of sentimentalism from me, because I myself am married, and I'm wondering a little bit if Bethesda is pulling my heartstrings a little too closely and a little too well. But such is life. I think that the writing in Fallout 4 so far, I finished, I guess what I would call the first act. I guess I'll know what act I've finished once I actually beat the game, but I've basically been gung-hoing my way through the main plot line, and I've just kind of gotten through what I think might be the first major arc. And I like it. It's not throwing any curveballs. It's not going to win any like independent storytelling breaking of conventions awards, but I really, really like the show of the interpersonal relationships that Bethesda is putting into Fallout 4. And I kind of expected they would be good, because when we talked to Kal-El and Courtney Taylor and Brian Delaney, they talked about just how much work went into the voice acting and all across the board, not just with the voice protagonist. So it was really good. I'm really impressed with how interesting and authentic and unforced the interactions seem, especially for the scope. I mean, there is this kind of like, for some of these things, I feel like there is an asterisk, like, for a Bethesda game, like there's good writing for a Bethesda game, which I don't really mean as an insult, because they really tackle a lot in making these big expansive games. So I'm not like, when Fallout 3, the writing and the voice, wasn't, the actual delivery of lines wasn't that good, and some of the writing was a little questionable at times for the dialogue. Like, it was a little forgivable in some ways. Like, I feel like I look at it a little harshly in retrospect, because because I just have come to expect so much from games, and there's so many games like The Witcher out there that put so much effort into their writing. But Bethesda really has a lot on their plate. So I think first impressions after playing about 9 to 10 hours, it's pretty good. I like it. Even the antagonists that I have run into, the sort of negative characters who are your foils, are interesting and dynamic in a way that I didn't expect. That being said, there are some things that I am a little bleh about, and I feel like the one that I have to get off my chest right away is the power armor. Now, I don't hate the mechanics of the power armor. Now, some people have taken some of my ranting on Twitter to take it to mean that I don't like the mechanics of the power. I very much love the mechanics of the power armor. I love the idea of it being like a wearable like vehicle, and that having a fuel source. And I kind of like that they give you a taste of it early on, and they do run on this fuel source that is kind of scarce, so there is a barrier to entry. But I don't know. To me, there is something to going out of your way to get the power armor training that just kind of feels a little lost to me. Like and it feeling like that being retcon kind of bothers me a little bit. Since it remains completely unaddressed so far as I've been playing, though I haven't been digging into the lore too much. With the limited time I've had with it. But yeah, I'm a little disappointed by that. Like, from a lore perspective, the settlement building system looks shoddy as hell. Like, I have not personally experimented with it, but I watched our live stream of it. I've watched some other videos, and it just does not work the way it was kind of presented to us at E3, which is incredibly sensationalized. And you're always going to get the perfect everything when you're looking at the developer showing you their toys. But I expected it to be the weak place. It's the area where Bethesda probably has the least amount of experience, that is letting players build whatever they want. It seems like an okay first attempt. I've been staying away from it largely. I just am not that into it right now, because I'm trying to get through the main story, because I don't know, just I want to know what happens. But other than that, yeah, the settlement is kind of an for me. The combat for the game is significantly more difficult than previous installments of, like I said, Fallout 3 and New Vegas. I was expecting it to be a little easier from some of the playthroughs I've played. So either I really suck, which is a possibility that I'm not overlooking. But either I really suck, or it is actually a little bit tough. It's quite a bit tougher than previous installments, which is not really bad. I thought Fallout 3 was really, really too easy. And so I actually, my first playthrough, I wanted to do like a pure melee character, and I'm getting my ass handed to me pretty soundly doing it. I'm still getting the hang of the melee combat, but it's definitely not. I do find myself relying on firearms quite a bit. But overall, all the mechanics and the little hiccups aside, I did not imagine that I was going to enjoy this game as much as I did, because I did go into it a little bit cynical. I am cynical. When I get into a game, I have my guard up, and especially with Fallout 4, since I've been just like married to the concept of the game, for months now and covering it for Shoddycast, I was like, okay, well, my whole thing was that I was going to try to keep my hype in check moving forward. And I turned on the game. I started my first game, and they had that pre-reel playing, which I could take or leave. It's good. It's a good recap for people who aren't familiar with the franchise, but for me, who's a little familiar, I was a little bored by it, which is sad because they actually put a lot of effort to live shoot those. And then the character creation happens, and then I had like legitimate emotional responses through the intro, and through the parts of the intro that we actually know about, like the parts where you're just walking through the house and you're talking with your spouse, interacting with your baby, and then running, and then you get the sirens from the news broadcast, and like I legitimately got like anxious and worried, and I'm running and I'm seeing my neighbors whom are going to die in nuclear when the bombs drop. And that actually, like, that's the part that like everyone keeps talking about, other parts of the intro that get them emotionally like wrecked. That part did not affect me nearly as much as the feeling of running with my family to the vault, and in a way that, and it affected me in a way that I would have never imagined just the intro of a game to hit me. Which was really surprising. Like, Bethesda games, the intros have always felt intro-y, like, this is a game, here are mechanics, blah blah blah. So yeah, that was pretty fantastic, and I know Charles had a slightly different experience with it, and that is life, is it not? We all experience things a little differently. Anyway, I'm gonna turn over to him for the outro. Thank you guys. I'm gonna go get some sleep now, and I will be checking in with you guys on the social medias, and we will be doing some other stuff later, and I will definitely be getting you some videos while I'm on my honeymoon, because I am just that good. And anyway, I'm gonna go prepare for this funeral now.
And thank you all for joining us for this almost final episode of GNN. We'll be back with a live extra special or extra shoddy finale on Friday, December 4th, and we'll be doing special podcasts in the months ahead as major updates and DLC packs are released. And aside from GNN, Shoddycast has a bunch of top secret projects in the works. They'll be announced slowly in the future, but for now, we're going to whet your appetite by having a contest. The details will be available soon, but we're having a contest where you can win a personally recorded message from the voice actor that does the storyteller. Details will be available soon on how to enter and what to do, but just keep that in mind. And of course, Austin and I will be back on Friday, December 4th for the final episode of GNN. I'm Charles Battersby.
And I'm Austin Horrigan. Thanks for listening.